The engine of a Bugatti Chiron doesn't sound like a car. It sounds like a natural disaster. It's a low, vibrating growl that you feel in your chest before you hear it with your ears. As I downshifted into second gear, turning onto the long, winding driveway of the Carrington estate, the exhaust let out a crackle that sounded like a gunshot. The iron gates, which used to look so massive and intimidating to me, now seemed small, fragile. The security guard stepped out of his booth. He looked annoyed. He put his hand up to stop me. He saw a matte black hypercar that cost $3 million, and he saw a threat. He didn't see the boy who used to beg him to let the pizza delivery guy in because his stepmother wouldn't allow commoners on the property. I rolled down the window. The glass lit away silently. The guard leaned in, squinting past the smell of expensive leather and new money. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked, his voice dripping with that fake politeness rich people pay for. I took off my sunglasses. I looked him dead in the eye. I asked him if the family was home. He blinked. He frowned. He recognized the eyes. Maybe he recognized the scar on my chin, but his brain couldn't process the rest. He couldn't process the Tom Ford suit, the Patek Philippe watch, the air of absolute terrifying confidence. "I'm here for the wedding," I said. He checked his clipboard. "Name?" he asked nervously. I didn't give him my name. I just handed him a black envelope embossed with gold. He opened it. His eyes went wide. He pressed the button. The gates swung open. 5 years ago, I walked out of these gates with a black garbage bag over my shoulder, wearing shoes with holes in the soles, while my stepbrother laughed from the balcony. Today, I'm driving back in with enough horsepower to tear their world apart. They kicked me out for being poor, for being a stain on their perfect reputation. They are about to learn that stains don't just wash away. Sometimes they come back as a tsunami. If you believe that the best revenge is massive success, and you want to see exactly how I humble the people who destroyed my life, hit that subscribe button right now. You are not going to want to miss a single second of this takedown. Let's go back 5 years. Before the Bugatti. Before the billions. Back when my name was just Liam, the charity case. My mother had married Richard Carrington when I was 10. She was the maid, he was the oil tycoon. It was a fairy tale for her, but for me, it was a horror movie. When she died of cancer 3 years later, Richard didn't kick me out immediately. That would have looked bad for his public image. Instead, he kept me, but not as a son, as a servant who lived in the attic. I wasn't allowed to eat at the dinner table. I ate in the kitchen with the staff. I wasn't allowed to use the main pool. I wasn't allowed to speak to Richard's biological son, Bryce, unless spoken to. Bryce was the golden boy. He was cruel, lazy, and entitled. He treated me like his personal punching bag. If he failed a test, it was my fault for distracting him. If he crashed his car, it was my fault for not cleaning the windshield properly. And Richard? Richard just watched. He looked at me with cold indifference, like I was a piece of furniture he regretted buying. The breaking point happened on Bryce's 21st birthday. It was a gala. The entire city elite was there. Senators, CEOs, celebrities. The driveway was filled with Ferraris and Bentleys. I was 20 years old, working my way through community college, but that night, I was forced to work the party as a waiter. My stepmother, Victoria, a woman whose heart was made of ice and Botox, told me that if I dropped a single glass, I would be sleeping on the street. I was carrying a tray of crystal flutes filled with vintage champagne. I was invisible, moving through the crowd of people who spent more on a handbag than I would earn in a lifetime. I saw Bryce holding court by the fountain. He was drunk. He was loud. He was telling a story about how he crashed his Porsche and his daddy just bought him a new one. He saw me. His eyes lit up with malicious glee. He whispered something to his friends. They laughed. As I walked past, Bryce stuck his foot out. It wasn't subtle. It was a calculated move to humiliate me. I tripped. The tray went flying. 20 glasses of champagne shattered on the marble patio. The sound was like an explosion. The music stopped. The chatter died. Everyone turned to look. I was on my knees, soaked in alcohol, surrounded by broken glass. I looked up. Bryce was laughing, pointing at me. "Look at him," he shouted. "Can't even walk straight. This is what happens when you let the help mingle with people, Dad." Richard Carrington walked over. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't look at his son who caused it. He looked at me with pure disgust. He grabbed me by the collar of my cheap waiter's uniform and hauled me to my feet. "You are an embarrassment," he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "I have given you a roof. I have given you food. And this is how you repay me? By making a scene at my son's birthday?" "He tripped me," I stammered. "Bryce tripped me." Victoria, my stepmother, stepped forward. She slapped me. It was a sharp, stinging blow that echoed across the silent courtyard. "Don't you dare lie," she screeched. "We saw you. You're clumsy, you're ungrateful, and you are a thief." "A thief?" I touched my burning cheek. "I never stole anything. My diamond earrings are missing from my vanity," she lied smoothly. "I knew it was you. I've been waiting for you to slip up." "I didn't take them," I yelled. "Get out," Richard said. He pointed to the gate. "Get out of my house, now. Don't pack a bag. Don't go to your room. Just leave. If I see you on this property in 10 minutes, I'm calling the police and having you arrested for grand larceny." I looked around the circle of wealthy, beautiful faces. Nobody stepped in. Nobody helped. They just watched the entertainment. I looked at Bryce. He was smirking, raising a fresh glass of champagne and a mock toast. I turned around. I walked to the gate. It started to rain, a light drizzle that turned into a downpour, soaking my uniform. I didn't look back. I walked 5 miles to the nearest bus stop. I sat on the bench, shivering, with $12 in my pocket and nowhere to go. I realized then that poverty isn't just about not having money. It's about not having a voice. They could lie about me, hit me, and throw me away, and I couldn't do a single thing about it. I spent the next 6 months in hell. I lived in a shelter. I worked construction during the day and washed dishes at night. My hands became calloused. My skin became rough. I was exhausted, hungry, and angry. Every night, I closed my eyes and saw the Carringtons in their mansion, sleeping on silk sheets, while I slept on a cot that smelled of bleach and sweat. I vowed that I would survive. I vowed that one day I would be the one holding the power, but I didn't know how. I was just a dropout with a criminal record. Victoria had actually filed a police report for the earrings I didn't steal, so I had a pending charge hanging over my head. Nobody would hire me for a real job. Then, the letter came. It didn't come by mail. It was hand-delivered to the construction site by a man in a gray suit. He looked out of place among the cement mixers and dust. He asked for Liam. I thought he was a cop. I thought Richard had sent someone to harass me. I picked up a wrench, ready to defend myself. "I'm not here to hurt you," the man said, adjusting his glasses. "My name is Arthur Pendleton. I'm a solicitor from London. I've been looking for you for 6 months." "London?" I wiped the sweat from my forehead. "I've never been to London. You have the wrong guy." "Your mother was Sarah Miller?" he asked. "Yes. And she told you that your father died before you were born?" "Yes. Car accident." Mr. Pendleton sighed. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a file. That wasn't entirely true, Liam. Your father didn't die. He left. He was a young man, reckless, and he fell in love with your mother, who was a student in America at the time. His family, my employers, did not approve. They forced him to return to England. They annulled the marriage. They paid your mother to disappear and never contact him again. She agreed, on the condition that she could keep you. I stared at him. The noise at the construction site faded. Who was he? His name was Julian Sterling, Pendleton said. He was the sole heir to the Sterling shipping fortune, one of the oldest and largest fortunes in Great Britain. Was? I asked. He died last year, Pendleton said softly. He never married again. He never had other children. He spent the last 20 years trying to find you, but your mother covered her tracks well. When he passed, he left strict instructions in his will. We were to find Sarah Miller's son. We were to perform a DNA test. And if it was a match, we were to hand over the keys to the kingdom. The kingdom? I laughed nervously. What does that mean? Did he leave me a house? Some cash? Pendleton looked around the dirty construction site. He looked at my torn jeans. He smiled a small, tight smile. Liam, the Sterling estate includes shipping lanes, real estate in London, Dubai, and New York, a collection of vintage automobiles, and a diversified investment portfolio. The current valuation of the liquid assets alone is approximately £4.2 billion. My wrench fell to the ground. Clang. Billion? I whispered. With a B? With a B, Pendleton confirmed. If you are willing to provide a DNA sample, and if you are willing to come with me to London to sign the paperwork, you are the sole beneficiary. You aren't just rich, Liam. You are a titan. I sat down on a pile of bricks. I couldn't breathe. I thought about the $12 in my pocket. I thought about the earrings Victoria accused me of stealing. I thought about Bryce's Porsche. But then, though, why now? I asked. Because it took us this long to find you, Pendleton said. So, Liam, do you want to keep mixing cement? Or do you want to claim your birthright? I looked at my hands. Dirty. Bleeding. I looked at the horizon. I didn't see London. I saw the Carrington estate. I saw the gate. I'll come, I said, standing up. But I have one condition. Anything, Pendleton said. I need access to a portion of the funds immediately, I said. And I need total anonymity. Nobody in America can know who I am. Not yet. That can be arranged, Pendleton said. May I ask why? Because, I said, a cold smile forming on my face. I have a birthday party to attend. That was 5 years ago. I spent those 5 years in Europe. I learned how to speak, how to dress, how to fight, and how to invest. I turned 4 billion into 6. I became a ghost, a whisper in the financial world. I bought companies that Richard Carrington relied on for his supply chain. I bought the bank that held the mortgage on his estate. I bought the very ground he walked on, and he didn't even know it. And now, I'm back. The security guard at the gate handed me back the black envelope. He opened the gate. I shifted the Bugatti into first gear. The car rolled forward, crunching on the gravel. The mansion came into view. It looked smaller than I remembered. It looked cheap. There were cars parked everywhere. It wasn't a birthday party today, it was a wedding. Bryce was getting married to a senator's daughter. It was the social event of the season. Perfect. I pulled the Bugatti right up to the front entrance, blocking the path of a Rolls Royce. I killed the engine. The silence was sudden and heavy. Valets rushed over, confused. They had never seen a car like this. They didn't know if they should ticket me or bow to me. The door of the Bugatti opened upwards. I stepped out. My Italian leather shoes hit the pavement. I adjusted my cuffs. I looked at the front door. Richard and Victoria were standing there, greeting guests. They looked older. Victoria's face was tighter. Richard looked tired. They saw the car first. Their eyes went wide with greed and curiosity. Then they looked at the man standing beside it. They didn't recognize me. Not yet. I was just a mysterious billionaire crashing their son's wedding. I walked up the steps. The music from the quartet drifted out. I stopped in front of them. "Welcome," Richard said, extending a hand, his eyes scanning my expensive suit. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Richard Carrington." I didn't shake his hand. I just looked at it. "We've met, Richard," I said. My voice was deeper, richer than the boy he knew. He frowned. "I don't recall. Are you a friend of Bryce?" "Something like that," I said. I looked at Victoria. "Hello, Mother." Victoria froze. She dropped her clutch. It hit the ground with a soft thud. She stared at me. She looked at the scar on my chin. She looked at my eyes. "Liam?" she whispered. It was a sound of pure horror. "You're not supposed to be here," Richard stammered, his face turning pale. You're a vagrant, a thief." "Actually," I said, brushing a speck of dust off my lapel, "I'm the owner." "Owner of what?" Richard demanded, trying to regain his composure. "This is my house." "Is it?" "Check your mortgage, Richard." "The bank sold the note last week. To Sterling Holdings. That's me. Technically, you're trespassing on my property." The color drained from his face. As for the thief accusation, I continued, leaning in close so only they could hear. "I didn't steal your earrings, Victoria, but I did just steal your son's spotlight, and I'm just getting started." I walked past them to the ballroom. The game was on. And this time, I wasn't the one holding the tray. I was the one holding the cards. The ballroom was exactly as I remembered it, suffocatingly opulent. Crystal chandeliers dripping from the ceiling, the smell of expensive lilies masking the scent of desperation, and a sea of people pretending to like each other. I grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. I didn't drink it, I just held it, remembering the weight of the tray I used to carry. I saw Bryce. He was standing near the cake, surrounded by his usual sycophants. He looked older, heavier, his face puffy from years of excess. He was laughing at something, his head thrown back, completely oblivious to the wolf that had just walked into his sheep pen. His fiancée, a senator's daughter named Chloe, stood next to him. She looked bored. She was checking her phone. I walked straight toward them. The crowd parted. People noticed me. They whispered, "Who is he? Is that a movie star? Is that a prince?" The suit did the talking for me. A bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo, cut to perfection, says more than a resume ever could. I stopped right in front of Bryce. He looked at me, annoyed that someone had interrupted his story. He squinted. Then his eyes widened. The glass in his hand wavered. "Liam?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Hello, Bryce," I said smoothly. "Happy wedding day." He laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. No way. Look at you. Did you rob a bank? Or did you rent a suit for the day to come beg for your old job back?" His friend snickered. They were the same friends from 5 years ago. Still immature, still cruel. But their laughter was hesitant. They looked at my watch. They looked at my shoes. They knew. "I didn't rob a bank, Bryce," I said, taking a sip of champagne. "I bought the bank." Bryce sneered. "Yeah, right. Mom said you were living in a shelter. You're probably valeting cars outside and stole that suit from a customer. Security!" He waved his hand for the guards. 2 large men in black suits started walking toward us. The room went silent. Everyone loved a scene. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. As the guards got closer, I pulled a small black card from my pocket. Not a credit card. A business card. I held it up. The lead guard stopped. He looked at the card. It had a single logo on it, the logo of the private security firm that Richard Carrington had hired for the event, Titan Security. I own the security firm too, Bryce, I said calmly. I bought it last month. These men work for me. The guard looked at Bryce, then at me. He nodded respectfully to me and stepped back. Bryce's face turned a deep shade of crimson. He looked around, realizing his power had just evaporated. "What do you want?" he hissed. "Money? Is that it? You want a handout?" "I want a wedding present," I said. I pulled my phone out. "I'm feeling generous. I heard you've been having some trouble with your trust fund. Bad investments? Gambling debts?" Bryce went pale. "How do you know that?" "I know everything, Bryce. I know you owe $2 million to a bookie in Vegas. I know you leveraged your future inheritance to pay for this wedding because Daddy cut you off. And I know that if you don't pay by Monday, things get physical." Chloe, the fiancé, looked at Bryce with horror. "You told me you paid for everything, cash," she whispered.
I didn't let him answer. I tapped my phone screen. "I just bought your debt, Bryce. I paid the bookie off. You don't owe him anymore."
Bryce looked relieved for a second. "Really? You did that for me?" "No," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I did it for me, because now you owe me. And unlike the bookie, I don't want money. I want collateral." "Collateral?" Bryce stammered. "I don't have anything." "Yes, you do," I said. I looked out the window at the driveway, at his prized possession, a vintage 1965 Shelby Cobra, his baby, the car Richard gave him for his 18th birthday.
"I want the car," I said.
Bryce gasped. "No. No way. That car is worth $3 million. It's my legacy." "It's your debt," I corrected. "Transfer the title right now, or I call the bookie back and tell him the deal is off." And I think we both know what he does to people who don't pay. Bryce looked at Chloe. She was disgusted. He looked at his parents who were watching from across the room, terrified to intervene. He looked at me. He saw no mercy, only the reflection of his own cruelty staring back at him. "Fine," he screamed, throwing his keys at me. "Take it. It's just a car." I caught the keys with one hand. I didn't smile. I walked over to the DJ booth. I took the microphone. The feedback squealed. "Excuse me, everyone," I announced. My voice echoed through the ballroom. "I'd like to propose a toast to the groom, a man who taught me the value of gravity when he tripped me 5 years ago. Today, I'm returning the favor. But I'm not tripping him. I'm just taking his wheels." I raised my glass. Cheers. I walked out of the ballroom. The silence was absolute. I walked down the steps to the driveway. My Bugatti was parked there, looking menacing. But next to it was the blue Shelby Cobra. I got into the Shelby. I started the engine. It roared to life, a raw American muscle sound that shook the windows of the mansion. I looked up at the balcony. Bryce was standing there watching me, tears of rage in his eyes. I revved the engine. I peeled out of the driveway, leaving black tire marks on the pristine white stone. I left my $3 million Bugatti behind. I didn't need it. I had plenty of cars, but taking his? That was priceless. As I drove through the gates, I dialed a number on the car's Bluetooth. "It's done," I said. "I have the car. Now, initiate phase 2. What's phase 2, sir?" my assistant asked. I looked back at the Carrington estate in the rearview mirror.
Phase 2 is the house, I said. Call the bank, call the inspectors. I want every single loan Richard Carrington has called in by tomorrow morning. I want to foreclose on his life.
I hung up. The wind whipped through my hair. I was driving a stolen legacy down a road I used to walk in broken shoes. And the best part? The wedding hadn't even started yet. By the time they cut the cake, they wouldn't just be humiliated. They would be homeless. If you want to see how I take the mansion, the company, and the rest of their dignity, make sure you are subscribed. The real eviction notice is coming next. The morning after the wedding wasn't filled with honeymoon bliss. It was filled with lawyers. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. Adrenaline is a powerful fuel, and I had 5 years of it stored up in my veins. I sat in my penthouse office in downtown Manhattan, overlooking the city that Richard Carrington thought he owned. On the mahogany desk in front of me sat a single file, the foreclosure notice. My assistant, a sharp woman named Sarah, who used to work for the FBI, walked in. She placed a cup of black coffee on the desk. She didn't ask how I was doing. She knew the mission. She told me the bank managers were on line 1, the repo team was on line 2, and Richard Carrington had been calling the front desk every 3 minutes for the last hour. I told her to put Richard through. I picked up the phone. I didn't say hello. I just listened. Richard was screaming. He wasn't the composed oil tycoon anymore. He was a desperate man watching his sandcastle wash away in the tide. He shouted about lawsuits. He shouted about knowing the governor. He shouted that I was an ungrateful wretch who stole his son's car. I took a sip of coffee. I waited for him to take a breath. Then I spoke. I asked him if he remembered the attic. The line went silent. I asked him if he remembered how cold it was in the winter, because he wouldn't pay to insulate the servants' quarters. I asked him if he remembered the mold in the corner that gave me a cough for 3 months. He stammered. He said that was in the past. He said we could work something out. He offered me money. He offered to buy me off. I laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound. I told him I didn't want his money. I told him I had more money in my couch cushions than he had in his entire portfolio. I told him I wanted the house. And not just the house. I wanted the furniture, the art, the silverware, the very bed he slept on. I told him he had 24 hours to vacate the premises before the marshals arrived. He hung up. I put the phone down. I turned to Sarah. I told her to mobilize the team. We were going to pay a visit to my childhood home. The drive to the estate the next morning was different. I wasn't in a sports car this time. I was in the back of a black SUV, part of a convoy of 10 vehicles, trucks, movers, security. It looked like a military invasion. And in a way, it was. We pulled up to the gates. They were locked. A chain had been wrapped around the bars. A pathetic attempt to keep the inevitable out. I didn't buzz the intercom. I nodded to the driver of the lead truck. He accelerated. The heavy steel bumper of the armored truck hit the gates. Metal shrieked. The chain snapped. The gates flew open. We drove up the driveway. The lawn was littered with trash from the wedding. The tent was still up, half collapsed, flapping in the wind like a surrendered flag. We parked in front of the main entrance. I stepped out. I walked up the steps. The front door was locked. I didn't knock. I signaled to the locksmith. He had the door open in 30 seconds. I walked into the foyer. It was quiet, too quiet. Boxes were stacked everywhere. They were trying to pack. They were trying to save what they could. I walked into the living room. Richard was sitting in his armchair, a glass of scotch in his hand. It was 10 in the morning. Victoria was frantically wrapping a porcelain vase in bubble wrap. Bryce was nowhere to be seen. Victoria looked up. She screamed. She dropped the vase. It shattered on the floor.
Get out! She shrieked. You have no right.
I pulled the deed from my jacket pocket. I held it up. I have every right, Victoria. This house belongs to Sterling Holdings. And since you missed your mortgage payment yesterday, because I froze your accounts, I am now the landlord. And I'm evicting you. Richard stood up. He looked defeated. He looked old. He asked me why I was doing this. He asked if this was really about the champagne glasses I dropped 5 years ago. I looked at him. I looked at the grand staircase where I used to scrub the steps with a toothbrush. I looked at the chandelier that cost more than my mother made in a year. No, Richard, I said, this isn't about the glasses. This is about the lesson you taught me. You taught me that the world doesn't care about feelings. It cares about power. You taught me that if you don't have leverage, you are nothing. So I went out and I got leverage. And now I'm teaching you. I snapped my fingers. My team of movers swarmed the house. They didn't start packing boxes for them. They started taking inventory. I walked over to Victoria. She was clutching a jewelry box. I gently took it from her hands. That stays, I said.
She gasped. These are mine! My grandmother gave me these!
I opened the box. I pulled out a pair of diamond earrings, the ones she accused me of stealing. Actually, I said, holding them up to the light. These were listed as assets in the bankruptcy filing. They belong to the bank, which means they belong to me. I dropped them into my pocket. Where do we go? She whispered, tears streaming down her face. Her mascara was running. The ice queen was melting. I looked out the window. I pointed to the gatehouse, the small one-room shack where the security guard used to sleep. It had no air conditioning. It had a leaky roof. It was full of mold. You can stay there, I said, for 1 week, until you find a shelter. Richard looked at the shack. He looked at me. You can't be serious. That's inhumane. Is it? I asked. It's better than the attic. And at least I'm not charging you rent. Just then, Bryce walked in. He was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. He looked hungover. He looked wild. He saw the movers taking the TV. He saw his parents crying. He saw me. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He just stared. You took my car, he whispered. I turned to him. And now I'm taking your room, Bryce. But don't worry, I'm not going to sleep in it. I'm going to turn it into a closet. Because that's about how much space your legacy deserves. I walked past them, toward the kitchen. I opened the fridge. I took out a bottle of water. I sat down at the head of the dining table, the table I was never allowed to sit at. I watched as the movers carried their life away, piece by piece. The paintings, the rugs, the sofas. They stood in the empty hallway holding nothing but a few bags of clothes. The once mighty Carrington family reduced to guests in their own home. I took a sip of water. It tasted like victory. But I wasn't done. The house was just the shell. The real target was the company. The oil empire Richard had built on the backs of people like my mother. I picked up my phone. I dialed my broker. Initiate phase 3, I said. Dump the stock. But sir, the broker said, if we dump 40% of Carrington oil right now, the price will crash. You'll lose millions. I looked at Richard, who was shuffling toward the door, his head hung low. I don't care about the millions, I said. I care about the crash. Burn it to the ground. If you want to see how I bankrupt a billion-dollar company in a single afternoon and leave Bryce begging for a job at a gas station, hit that like button. The finale is going to be explosive. The stock market is a funny thing. It's not just numbers on a screen. It's a heartbeat. And at 12 o'clock that afternoon, the heartbeat of Carrington Oil flatlined. I sat in my temporary command center in the living room of the mansion I had just seized, watching the financial news on the massive 80-inch television that used to belong to Richard. The ticker at the bottom of the screen turned blood red. Carrington Oil, plunging, down 40%, down 50%, trading halted. Richard was standing by the window, staring out at the movers loading his wife's fur coats into a van. His phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again. He answered. I could hear the screaming from the other end of the line. It was his CFO. They're dumping it, Richard, the voice on the phone shrieked, loud enough for me to hear. Someone is dumping millions of shares. The price is in free fall. The banks are issuing a margin call. We don't have the liquidity. Richard dropped the phone. He turned to me. His face was gray. He looked like a ghost haunting his own life. You, he whispered, you're doing this. I told you, I said, not looking up from my iPad. I'm liquidating my position. I decided I don't want to be in the oil business anymore. It's bad for the environment. You're destroying a legacy, Richard screamed, running toward me. My grandfather built this company. You're burning billions of dollars just to spite me? No, Richard, I said, standing up. I'm burning billions of dollars to free myself. You use that money to silence my mother. You use that money to keep me in an attic. You use that money to buy judges and politicians so you could feel like a god. Today, I'm stripping you of your divinity. I checked my watch, and by the way, since the stock price just hit $4 a share, the bank has officially seized your remaining assets to cover the margin loans. You're not just evicted, Richard. You're bankrupt. He fell to his knees. It wasn't a figure of speech. His legs actually gave out. He collapsed on the Persian rug, sobbing. The man who wouldn't let me eat at his table was now kneeling at my feet. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel pity. I felt balanced. The scales of the universe had finally tipped back. I walked past him, out the front door, and down the steps. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. I got into the Shelby Cobra, Bryce's car. I started the engine. I drove past the gatehouse. I saw Victoria sitting on a plastic chair inside, looking lost. I didn't stop. If you are satisfied seeing justice served cold, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But wait, the story isn't over. We need to check in on Bryce. Fast forward 6 months. The winter in the city is brutal. The wind cuts through you like a knife. I was driving the Shelby through the downtown district. I liked driving it in the winter with the top down and the heat blasting. It was a reminder that I could control my environment. I needed gas. I pulled into a rundown station on 4th Street. It was dirty. The lights flickered. It was the kind of place where you locked your doors while you pumped. I got out. I was wearing a cashmere coat that cost more than the station itself. I grabbed the nozzle. Full serve only, sir. I looked up. A man in a greasy, oversized uniform was walking toward me. He had a hat pulled down low over his eyes. He was shivering. He looked miserable. He reached for the nozzle. I saw his hands. They were rough, chapped, dirty. I knew those hands. I used to envy how soft they were. Bryce? I asked. The man froze. He slowly lifted his head. It was him. But it wasn't the Bryce who drank vintage champagne. His face was gaunt. His eyes were hollow. He looked 20 years older. Liam? He croaked. He looked at the car. His car. He looked at my coat. He looked at the Patek Philippe on my wrist. Working hard? I asked, leaning against the car. I stammered. Nobody would hire me. After the bankruptcy, after the scandal, everyone turned their backs. This is the only place that didn't ask questions. Funny how that works, I said. Poverty is a lonely place, isn't it? He looked at the nozzle in his hand. He looked at the gas, counting up on the pump. I'm sorry, he whispered. What was that? I'm sorry, he yelled, tears welling up in his eyes. I'm sorry I tripped you. I'm sorry I treated you like garbage. I'm sorry, okay? Please, please just help me. I can't live like this. I sleep in a hostel. I eat leftovers from the gas station market. Liam, please, you have billions. Just give me something, anything. I looked at him. I saw the arrogance was gone, replaced by pure, desperate fear. This was the moment I had dreamed of in the shelter. The moment he would beg. I reached into my pocket. Bryce's eyes lit up. He thought I was going to pull out a wad of cash. He thought I was going to write him a check. I pulled out a single, crumpled bill. A $12 bill? No such thing. I pulled out a 10 and 2 ones. $12.
The exact amount I had in my pocket the night they kicked me out.
I held it out to him. $12, I said. That's the seed capital. That's what I started with. If you're as smart and superior as you always said you were, you should be able to turn this into an empire. He stared at the money. $12? Are you joking? This won't even buy me lunch. It bought me a bus ticket, I said coldly, and that bus ticket took me to the library, and the library took me to the rest of my life. You don't need money, Bryce. You need hunger. I shoved the money into his chest pocket. I took the nozzle out of the car. Keep the change, I said. I got back into the Shelby. I started the engine. The rumble echoed off the metal roof of the gas station. Bryce stood there, clutching the $12, watching me. Wait, he screamed as I put the car in gear. Liam, don't leave me here. We're brothers. I looked at him in the rearview mirror. No, Bryce, I said to myself. We were never brothers. We were just roommates. I slammed on the gas. The tires screeched. I sped out of the station, merging onto the highway. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and red. I felt a weight lift off my chest. The anger was gone. The resentment was gone. I checked the rearview mirror one last time. The gas station was just a speck of light in the darkness. I turned on the radio. It was playing a classic rock song. I smiled. I wasn't the boy in the attic anymore. I wasn't the victim. I was the driver, and for the first time in my life, the road ahead was completely open. Thank you for watching this story of justice and redemption. If you believe that kindness is a choice and karma is real, share this video with a friend. And remember, the person you step on today might be the one driving the getaway car tomorrow. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next story.